super. Lep pozdrav, moje ime je Radovan iz Gordjarisa. Jaz imam čas, da otvorim tale panel za umetno inteligenco. Sicer bom preklopil zdaj na angleščino seveda, ampak sam to, da se rekel, da pozdravim še v slovenščini. Welcome everybody, my name is Radovan from company Gordjaris. I have the pleasure and honor to open the artificial intelligence panel. Just let me give you a short intro how it will run. Okay, so we have 6 speakers. Each one will have approximately 15 minutes. And there are several teams that will be engaged. So we will start with a keynote speaker, Brett from United States, regarding the cognitive AI. This will be followed by the industrial presentation by Victor, regarding the dual use of technologies and how the industry experiences can be used also in the defense industry. And we continue with the presentation from Armando regarding the multi-agent AI systems, a very interesting theme. And we again come to the industry regarding the intelligent geospatial solutions and systems. And we will finish off with 2 presentations from academia, so Ljubljana University, regarding the navigation in GNSS or GPS denied environments and everything that comes along. So the idea is that each speaker has 10 to 15 minutes, and immediately after his speech, you will have the opportunity for questions, okay? So it will be more ex cathedra, so fire off the questions immediately. I think that each speaker can receive 3 to 5 questions without any timing problems, and then the next speaker will come up. Okay, so this will not be a classical panel, so speakers are discussing for themselves. No, this is a panel for you, so you shoot the questions immediately after each topic and speech. So without any further ado, please, Brett, cognitive AI, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Radovan. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'd like to thank the Republic of Slovenia, Minister of Defense, Sidec, and Radovan for inviting me here. Met Radovan last year at an international symposia on simulation. So we had a chance to meet and discuss and talk about what we build, which are synthetic humans for training and readiness. So a little bit about me. I am CEO of Invisible Arts, but I happen to be very active still as a subject matter expert in training. We work across psychological operations, special forces, and general training. So in terms of that, we are what we call in the United States a non-traditional contractor. And what that means for us is that we tend to be disruptive. Some of our business actually started in the entertainment industry. So many, many years ago, so we started moving technology. So for us, AI and machine learning has been a big part of what we've done. So in terms of that, what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to introduce a new concept, and that's cognitive AI. Most of you have heard about general AI or large language models. In this case, it's a little bit different. We built this from the ground up starting about 5 years ago. And we're not going to be able to see any military demonstrations here, but we are going to see some commercial demonstration with our partner LG Electronics. Our synthetic humans are deployed with them globally for trade booths. So I'm going to explain to you the concept of synthetic humans and cognitive AI. But one thing I want to do, because some of you may not have ever been in an operational area before or understand how we make decisions in training, because it isn't just about sweep and clear. We have to engage. But more importantly, why are we doing this and why now? Because when we look at our threat reality in the world, and that's for all of us, and one thing I want to mention is that I work with coalition forces and have for many, many years. So in that perspective, the way we train together, is for the same threat in terms of that. But when we start looking here, particularly now, when we look at what is occurring around the world, is that we're having more engagements with individuals that approaches verbally, and we can see that in the news, both throughout the United States and the EU, and what is happening. So what happens is that we can make bad decisions because we're not listening. And that can erode legitimacy. And legitimacy, what I mean by that, is our ability to control the situation, control the battlefield. We have training gaps. And part of that is legacy simulations are scripted and amnesic, so we can't have a good dialogue. And again, we go back to this. We have to do sweep and clear. It's very important to shoot well, and shoot often. But we also have to have conversations. And when we look at that, we realize that simulation and what we call NPCs, they have no cognition. They're not real time. So it isn't actually the environment. And what happens here, that yesterday follows you, and it always does. So our approach was we developed synthetic humans with a middleware. And that cognitive middleware is an AI that is a systems of system design with a synthetic human on the front end. And you're going to see this, and we'll talk about it. But at the end of the day, what we really need to think about is, are we going to train with a library, or are we going to train with real time? And we'll talk a little bit about the roadmap. But what I want to do is kind of set a picture for you of what it's like to be in a space where before the first shot, a story defines our fight. And when you see this picture, and I'm going to tell you some of the story in here is from current intelligence that I work with. It is also from past experience. But I want to take you into this world. So picture this, okay? Here's this crowd. A woman is shouting at you. I hope our translation is correct for everybody. So when we start looking and we start considering this world, is that it's dawn in a coalition city. A patrol turns a corner into a market that is already weaponized. We have 10 phones streaming. We have quadcopters overhead. A rumor that was born 5 minutes ago spreads. Our blue force shook down a vendor last night. We have a target in front of us. We have an objective. A man with a child steps between us and that objective. And a woman shouts in a language that your interpreter half understands. And an event occurs and the crowd ripples. That doesn't mean we shoot. This is also communication, right? So across the theaters around the world now, we have adversaries that are controlling the conversation. And that is in the EU, and it is in the US, it is for NATO in general. We see this happening. Electronic warfare with reflective control, that's Russia. China is shaping gray zone norms and narrative tempo. We see that in Ukraine currently. Iran and proxies are flooding rumor channels and probing rules of engagement, which is a common issue with them. And networks and criminal syndicates that they support amplify grievance by having access to a country and claiming sanctuary. But the whole point here is they don't need to be at our aim, they have to be at our judgment. So if we only train marksmanship, chaos will train cognition. On the worst day, that is full cost for us, and we don't want that. So if we use synthetic humans, we bring the human terrain to life before contact. Humans generate forces that think, remember, manipulate, emote, persuade, self-preserve. They can take kinetic action and non-kinetic action. They argue, bargain, deceive, and escalate at the same ladder that our units live on. And this is common in an operating picture, right? If we integrate the injects of electronic warfare or language gaps or rumor propagation, it becomes very real. So if we rehearse the first conversation until it's faster than panic, cleaner than that rumor, the decisive enough seeds of initiative and shape that engagement in our terms, we can compress our OODA loop, right? We can protect civilians, and we can preserve our initiative. So again, if we only train marksmanship, chaos will train our people in cognition, and on the worst day, at full cost, full stop. So imagine a future, which is now, that we can use synthetic humans to talk faster than us, right? To outthink us, to outfight us. And that's what we're training for at this point, because warfare is changing. So what I'm going to do is step this through. We're going to talk a little bit about how we make decisions, and then we're also going to step through and talk about the technology and then do some demonstrations and application. So I'm going to be pretty quick through these. So in terms of this, we use what's called an OODA loop in general. So that can be observe, orient, decide, or detect and act. So when it comes to this, we observe the human terrain, right? We need to look at crowd signals. We need to see what's going on. We orient, which is what is happening, what is the intent, what is the capability of the people in front of us, but also what are the cultural rules of engagement. So in terms of that, we have to act. And that is our de-escalation to our escalation corridor, which are questions, which is time and space, show of force, or using proportional connect choices, which is very important. And then we loop this back through. So when we go through a decision schema here, when we look at escalation and de-escalation, words first, right? Then force. So when we look at purpose, for example, we have to win control early on, and that's commands and questions. And that's where we set our clear boundaries, right? We understand surface intent, but also we buy time. Because then we need to use our verbal toolkit and clear commands. Show your hands, step back, put your weapon on the ground. Because what we need to do is use targeted questions at that point to ID the person. We need to know their grievance, their purpose, and why they're there. And then we also need to confirm they understand us. And a lot of warfighters don't do a real good job of that. And we're going to talk in a minute of what fails. So not all missions are sweep and clear. Most are stability, access, and intel, right? So in many times, we train for the fight, but we're not necessarily training for stability, access, and intel, because that's important. And then also looking at our de-escalation corridor, which is showing force, our non-kinetic measures. We want to keep the peace as much as we can. We don't want to have a firefight if we don't need one. And then our escalation discipline. It's got to be proportional. It's got to be decisive. And we have to make sure that we pause and assess and repeat and use our language through the whole bit. So, in terms of this, where we make our mistakes often, in these situations, and particularly when we go back to our picture at the beginning, is that most lethal mistakes start with misreading humans. We have biases, and biases are a problem, right? We all have them, right? So in terms of that, if we misread the human, it's not a bad ballistic, it's us that caused the problem. Our adversaries often move faster than we can move our units, so for them, speed is a weapon. But we also have to train, right, to make sure that we have cognition under pressure. Because you can, and we'll talk about this in a minute, sets and reps, tunnel vision occurs. But if we are trained for the conversation, if we're trained for the culture, if we understand the people, maybe we don't make that mistake at the top. So why sets and reps fail? So cognition. Well, sets and reps are muscle memory. I can go in and I can clear a room, and I can teach you how to clear a room, no problem. Anytime, full stop, I can do it, right? But the problem is when we're clearing a room, it's not necessarily memory of an individual or an action or someone that you saw the day before, right? Cognitive overload is also a problem when we start inducing all of the factors that exist in the environment, right? We have noise, we have screaming, we have children, we have a guy on a phone making a phone call above. What is he making the phone call? Is he telling a position, right? But also, when we do sets and reps, we get variable outcomes because we may not be tracking it the right way. It may only be in a training facility just with video with what we call after-action review, right? So synthetic humans can help reduce that cognitive burden. So the first conversation is the fight, right? It's decision versus rounds, everything we've talked about. Perception errors drive escalation. What you don't hear hurts you. So we have to make sure that we have the ability to practice our rules of engagements and always remember this. It's legal, it's ethical, and then we go lethal in that order. If you're making a position to go kinetic, you should have to decide well and decide right. Because again, this is not always about use of force and going kinetic. It is also about preserving peace. It's also about preserving the fight for the right day. So we measure our legitimacy and harm alongside our lethality, and that is critical. And I think that more and more what we're seeing in training is that we are going that direction, that we don't need to just immediately go in and show this absolute force. We do have to have dominance, and we do have to have presence, but more importantly, we have to be able to judge that situation. So when we talk about training, so as we shift now, we're going to move into technology after this. Role players. We use live role players. And live role players we use to basically be the enemy. If you haven't seen them before, they're generally culturally appropriate, but they have issues. And because they are not actors. These are generally people that come from another country. You bring them in, maybe citizens from that country, in your country, and then you utilize them in training. So we use them to practice commands, questions, rapport, deception handling, all under stress. And there may be some kinetic engagement with them, right? Where they fail is they're often inconsistent, and they're scripted, they can break character, and they don't have a memory of an interaction with you or your team prior. So this team really games the whole scene. So again, you have this issue of muscle memory versus an actual environment that you're operating in. And we have limits, language or etiquette gaps. Sometimes they're not very diverse, but more importantly, cost, logistics, and security are huge issues. So one thing I always look at is cost. Training should be effective. It should be effective, and it should be cost neutral. It shouldn't be something that burdens any organization. But again, we go back to this, the learners master the play, not the problem, and the simulation breaks. So if we use a synthetic human, they don't do telegraphing, an actor does. So we don't forget prior conduct. The synthetic human remembers and changes the outcome. The role player never does, because they're just linear. And I can tell you, I've worked with hundreds, if not thousands of them, and even hundreds of them at a time in mass actual coalition events. So they can be effective, but when we think about it, they're only effective to a point. So when we start looking at computers and computer-based simulation, when you're looking at a computer-generated model, they're binary threat models. So they're really an and-if trees. They're not real-time, and they're very stiff. And they may only say one thing to you, say Allah Akbar. If you say As-salam to them, they don't respond. Whatever it might be in that chain. So you're not approaching them to try to de-escalate the situation. You're not able to do it in a patrol fashion. So you're just sweeping and clearing at that point, because you're shooting often, right, and shooting well. So also they tend to have low language, and they don't really have cultural etiquette, right, honorifics. So when we start thinking about this, synthetic humans are able to emote, self-preserve, deceive, and adapt in real time within a doctrine, and that's their doctrine, who they believe they are. They're Chinese, right? They're a sub-faction of Al-Qaeda, right? Whatever it might be. So in terms of this, the simulation never breaks. So that's how we decide to work in the battlefield, right? Or in an engagement. How we use role players and how we use computer-generated training. So now we get into the fun part. We get into the technology a bit. So when we think about this, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about AI, and I'm going to stay high level here. So there's general AI, and there's what's called large language models. So there's some issues with those. And some of those issues are that they really do live in the past. They're not real time. We're real time as human beings. If we interact, we're looking at each other's cues, looking at our physical cues. We're looking at our smile, our frown, our laughter. We're hearing our laughter, or we're hearing agreement. Really, LLMs and general AI are pleasing children. They just go down the path with you. They please you the whole time, And in terms of that, they're also text-based and voice-based, and you can't have any type of crowd contagion reaction because they're really, really poor at multi-agent coordination, meaning they don't talk to each other in the background, right? So in training, this becomes very difficult because it's stateless at that point. So when we think about this in terms of training, we have to train judgment under fire. We need agents that see, feel, decide, and act within guardrails. So operators rehearse for that first conversation and last resort with equal rigor. So what we have produced. So let's talk about this for a minute. So about 5 years ago, we're known in the United States for doing weird things. That's what the government comes to us for. So from the PSYOP side to training. And on the entertainment side of the business, which we do have commercial arms because that's kind of where we started, if you saw Jurassic World, the reason why the dinosaur looks so real is our AI on the entertainment side. And we pull those products into the military side. And we started doing that really kind of at the front end of our careers. Some of us have defense backgrounds and technology backgrounds. Some have entertainment backgrounds. So what we tried to do is fuse all of that for the common good. So in terms of that, part of the question to us was, well, you know, how do we replace live role players? And this was just a cursory conversation with, it was not our Undersecretary of Research and Development at the time. He just worked for the Navy. And it started there and then went to the Marines. And so what they were asking is, how can we develop a synthetic human to work with the role players, right? How can we have cultural realism? Because that's really what we're teaching, culture. And that is my expertise, is culture, right? So in terms of that, my dad's mother is from Italy. I grew up in Florida, in the US, in a Greek community surrounded by Cubans, Haitians, Jamaicans, Dominicans. So my American upbringing with an Italian family, right? And then all of these other cultures, I was exposed at a very young age to what the world really looks like. So my America is more like Europe, right? So I was probably raised more European or more Mediterranean than I was, you know, of course, American I was. But when we think about this, everybody is different in the way we behave, right? And that's where biases come in also. So dialect and etiquette was really important in this, but we really had to have some type of cognitive pressure that was realistic. And in terms of that, also being able to do perception and looking at persistent gaps, right? Tone and posture. Are you holding your weapon the right way? You know, are you speaking the right way? Are you commanding the same way? Our downrange effect was, how can we create a group of forces that talk to one another? And then also to have this in what's called a slim AI model. We call it pocket AI. So it is only trained on its single mission set. It doesn't go out to the cloud, and it doesn't have all this fairy dust out there that it's pulling in. But then also, again, how do we take all of this, augment a role player, and then give us the result? And our result was developing a system that is an AI middleware, that is a systems of systems, that has a cognitive aspect to it, that can absorb the information very quickly, and then perform as a human perform on the front end, which then we have a synthetic human, which you're going to meet. So I'm able to show you some pictures here. So this is our friend Sergey. Sergey is Wagner. He's operating in the Ukraine. So he's not very nice. But as we know, mercenaries oftentimes and PMCs, you can negotiate and bargain with him. He very much is Russian, very, 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 very Russian. You know, deception is a part of his language, but you have to work with him. And maybe you work with him the right way and you make him angry and he decides to pull the weapon because you didn't take the right approach in your diplomacy with him. So when we start talking about the difference between cognitive AI and real-time cognitive AI and LLMs, you don't get that experience. Because an LLM or a general AI can't produce what I just described with Sergey. And he's nasty. I don't like him. He's not a very nice man. Although I've gotten on my side a couple times, but he tends to be a little angry. So when we go also, the problem with LLMs is they tend to hallucinate and lie. And that's what we've avoided. They don't have physical actions, and they're really just not reliable in terms of doctrine because of the fact that they hallucinate. For as a cognitive AI, we're able to take sight, we're able to take hearing, we're able to take languages, and fuse that into one AI that can see you and hear you. Just like a human being can, it can judge you, it understands you. But most importantly, it understands self-preservation and affect, dialect and etiquette, but it also knows your reputation. Because when I came in as a leader last week and was training with you, I really made you angry. And this week, I'm coming in and trying to be a little bit nicer. But the problem is, I remember that you made me angry. Because that's the real world. If I go in and I don't have diplomacy, and I come in and I decide with a key leader, particularly in Africa or another region, and I stand there and I talk to him and he sits down in front of me, I'm talking over him. My first move in that room is that I'm going to take a seat to speak with him. I'm going to have that conversation with him. And what I also like to see is it tea time? It's tea time. Because I need to request information for him and give him honor. And honorifics are important in all of this. And the only way that we can do that is basically by using a cognitive AI, because otherwise we're not able to have that effect. So, a little bit on the tech before we get into the demo, is that it is a cognitive middleware. It is the only one that exists that we know of. It is a systems of systems. So when we think about it, it has databases, It has an emotion engine, it has a movement engine, it has a cognition engine, it has a decision engine, and it has a rules engine. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff around it. So that connects to the human interface, like Mr. Lee here, also holding a gun. Mr. Lee, for example, is a synthetic interface. You can command him to get on his knees, put down his weapon, turn over, put your hands behind your back. He can walk away from you. And those are his decisions based on that AI. So your engagement with him dictates just like a human interaction. I may not follow your commands. I may not want to provide you information. So in terms of that, we like to look at it this way. Leader lane live is what we like to call it, right? And that's the unit's commands, their spacing, their tone change. And what happens is Hive is that kind of AI smart router, fuses all of these indicators, these behaviors, with the rules of engagement. Well, you're probably questioning, well, how does it actually see? It has a camera. And that camera can track many, many people in a room. We don't disclose how many. But what I can tell you, if it's a team of 6, it can see all of them. And we look at about 200 points on the body, which is always all the way down to the feet. So I can look at your gait. I can look at how you're standing with your weapon. Because if I'm engaging you and I'm coming and questioning you, I may be on the ready, but I'm not here. It'll recognize if you're in a stance that's aggressive, and then it changes its tone based on you. It hears and speaks in 38 different languages. It will do live translation. And in terms of that, so if we're looking at broken, if we were using, let's say, Slovenian, and it was speaking, Chinese, for example. You can speak to it in Slovenian, it responds in Chinese, vice versa, or within broken Slovenian / Chinese. So in terms of its ability to see, hear, speak, right, all of this relates down to a path of one thing, and that's after action review. Because the system, that character is silently judging you as the trainee and looking at your persistent gaps. And what's important is that when I am training a team as a trainer, I'm looking out at the team, but I may have bias. And that bias is observational bias because I might be having a bad day. I may not like you, or I'm just tired, so I'm going to miss things. But also my bias affects my review of you, and we don't get a true view of what happened with that leader and his team. And let's say we're going in for a diplomacy mission, like I said, you're sitting down, all of those things that you need to do. It is so vastly important that we understand what your persistent gap is. So it judging you and then giving you a performance review at the end allows us to rerun the situation, apply what we call the TLOs and ELOs in an appropriate fashion, so you're able to affect change. Now, you're wondering, how does it think? Well, I'm going to show you. This is the human emotion wheel. I'm sorry, the laser doesn't show up here. So I'm going to walk over here. It's fuzzy on purpose because human emotions are fuzzy, right? This is actually what it's programmed on, the cognitive aspect of it. So that's its core. So when we think how we operate, we move between these areas. If it's love, affection, hate, anger, disgust, we get over here into the wheel, and now it's physical action, violence. This lights up when you talk to it, based on your tone, your posture. So when we look at the human emotional spectrum, it serves as the foundation. And that is the foundation of warfighting, right? It's our emotional spectrum. I'm in a moment that I have to make a decision to use a weapon or not because, honestly, there's a kid in front of me. Is that a grenade? Is that an RPG in his backpack, or does he just have a backpack? Those are real choices, and we have emotions connected to that. Or it's an emotion that I go into a room and somebody went down next to me that's on my team. How do I react? Do I react with anger? So we have to keep that in mind. What's important about the AI is it's not static rule responses, right? So it can adjust its tone and its choices of words, its interaction style, based on its emotional feedback from you. So it avoids being robotic, and it does emulate human behavior. In terms of that, again, when we look at measurement, we're looking at time to escalation or de-escalation, decision quality, and your cultural correctness, so your honorifics, right? So in terms of a synthetic role player, what it brings to life is this, is that it remembers and it adapts. Reputation persists across reps. Remember I said this earlier. Yesterday should haunt you because it does in an area of operation. You get to know these people. And you know what? If you're first inserting, and let's say if it's in just an action, with a crowd, and you're seeing this in the United States right now. You're seeing it also in the UK, where they're having to deploy sometimes military to respond to outside factions that now are attacking. Well, what's happening is that you have people screaming in your face, and they have to make a choice. They're using non-lethal rounds, but they still have to make a choice to go kinetic. And that's a lot of noise, and that's hard to overcome. So if we use synthetic role players, you have that because let's say in that case, you're seeing these some protesters probably day after day. So in terms of this also, they can drive our social behavior, honor, fear, shame, loyalty. And more importantly, again, we talked about this earlier, respect buys time. So again, we go back to sitting with our key leader. Respect buys time because we want the intelligence. So we have a connected world state amongst various synthetic role players and the synthetic humans, or even real humans, live role players. So we can have real-time conversation that's supportive of actional non-role players. So let's say in the background in the simulation, you have guys over here that may not be talking, but they can certainly be informed of the conversation and make a determination to shoot you. All right, so here comes the fun part. You're going to get to see one. So we have a global partnership commercially with LG Electronics. We work with them in some ways in defense as well. But LG Korea headquarters decided that they wanted to form a partnership with us to deploy synthetic humans across hospitality, so hotels, things like that, but as well as in all of their booths for conferences, much like here. So when we think about we're walking up and somebody asking somebody about product, that's what our friend Gervais is doing. Tell you a little bit about Gervais. Gervais is black. He is presumably from Bermuda because he has a British accent. He is more on the feminine side. He is very, very kind. So when we start thinking about that wedge of human emotion, he was pushed into this wedge of kindness, helpfulness. And what you're going to see is a free conversation. There is no script. He has only been programmed specifically for the products in the booth and his behavior. So he believes that he has worked for LG for 15 years, that he is a product specialist. So this is something that LG posted globally. Unfortunately, I can't show the military aspect because it is training in the US, but this will give you a really good idea of how it works. And then we'll see a second video where I ask it some other questions.
Hi, Gervais. This is Eleanor with LG Electronics. Could you tell me about the display you're living in?
Yeah.
Bonjour, Eleanor. I'm delighted to tell you about this cutting-edge 30-inch transparent OLED display I'm peering on. It's quite remarkable, creating this floating, almost magical effect while maintaining crystal clear visibility. The transparency allows the display to blend seamlessly with its surroundings, making it perfect for cruise ships where we want to preserve the aesthetic appeal while delivering high-quality digital experiences.
Could you tell us how a display like this could help improve cruise experiences?
Notice he looks at her now.
Ah, c'est fantastique. This transparent OLED technology transforms cruise experiences in remarkable ways. Imagine interactive wayfinding that appears to float in the air, helping guests navigate the ship without cluttering the elegant design. In restaurants, it can display menus and daily specials while maintaining the ambience.
So that's a free conversation. She had an interview just like she would interview anybody else. We think that's the first interview with a synthetic human. Now, here's some questions that I came into the show a little bit later at the end. And this is persistent memory, his ability to use some self-preserving behavior in terms of being tired, doing some jokes and a wrap-up, and then I'll conclude in just a moment.
Nam? Hi, how are you? Was wondering if you can tell me a little bit about the LG products at the Sea Trade Show.
Absolutely. Our maritime-optimized solutions are truly exceptional, particularly our pro-centric smart TVs with special conformal coating that stands up brilliantly to salt air and humidity. We've also got some...
How are you feeling today, being here at the Sea Trade Show at the final day?
Oh my goodness, it's been such an incredible show. My feet are a bit tired, but my enthusiasm hasn't dimmed one bit. You know, I've met so many fascinating cruise industry professionals, and sharing our LG maritime solutions with them has been absolutely thrilling. Though I must admit, I might need an extra espresso to maintain this energy through closing time.
What has been your favorite interaction while at Seatrade?
Oh, there was this fascinating conversation with a cruise line's chief technology officer about our transparent OLED displays. He was absolutely amazed when I demonstrated how they could transform their atrium spaces while maintaining the open field.
So that's yesterday
The look
follows
on his
you.
face when the display switched from clear to vibrant content, priceless. Those are the moments that make these long show days worthwhile.
Gervais, do you have a joke for us about the cruise industry?
Why don't cruise ships carry babies? Because they might throw up the anchor. Oh dear, that was terrible.
That was really terrible. How about a new one?
What do you call a cruise ship's TV that won't work? A channel in distress. Oh my,
Bad joke.
that was even worse than yesterday's joke. Maybe I should focus on our pro-centric displays instead. At least those never fail to impress.
Do you have any final words for the last day of Seatrade 2025 in Miami? Anything that you'd like to say to everyone?
Oh my goodness, what an incredible week it's been. To everyone who visited our LG booth, from the cruise line executives to the ship designers, thank you for making this Seatrade 2025 absolutely spectacular. Your passion for innovating the guest experience truly inspires us. Until next time, may your seas be smooth and your displays be brilliant. And I promise to work on my jokes for 2026.
So what you saw there was basically its memory of events. That's based on the questions I ask him, just like a human being. So when we start looking at military training, they can be anything and anybody with any doctrine. So if you can imagine for a minute what that means, yelling, vocalizing, getting big, it's because they are full body. They're not just a bust like you saw there. But in terms of that, that's the ability of it to act like a human being and to have a conversation, and you do form relationships with them. I have a relationship with Gervais. He remembers me. He's actually really nice. And it's very strange because you can have a wide range of conversations with him. But in terms of that, how we use it is intel gathering, sweep and clear, win hearts and minds, SOF or General Forces patrol training. And at the end of the day, what does this mean? Train for judgment, so force is justified, and it's the cleanest, right? First conversation wins. Cognitive AI makes complexity trainable and repeatable. But more importantly, we build synthetics so our war fighters and our people come home. And our final composite on all of this is rapport unlocks the target, civilians stand down, and blue exits without firing. Thank you. I probably went over a little, so probably only a couple questions. Yeah. Any questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Here it is. Okay, from industry to defense. It's usually vice versa, right? But is there anything that we can teach or learn ourselves from the industry and the work that we are working on that is suitable or adaptive to defense? I guess so. The recent years or history has taught us that most of the advancements and R&D and innovation comes from military, right? We all know the best product that has ever come from this industry is the duct tape, right? But there are also others like internet, radio communication, GPS. So although I do have some research experience working on a behavior analytics simulation for soldiers project, I'm not here to talk about defense. I come from a company where we are for 20 years on a technological front working in many industries developing business critical solutions. And in the last 10 years, we focused a lot on developing custom machine learning models on proprietary data, on our clients' proprietary data. So today, I'm proud to say we have machine learning models running in production in more than 9 industries. So it's safe to say we have some cross-industry experience. And today, it's my, I would say, goal to share some of the projects or insights of the projects that we were working on. And I chose 3 examples. The first one is location intelligence. So in the recent project that we've just concluded, we wanted to understand how mobile positioning data can be used to model traffic habits and behavior. So, you know, every time we touch our phone, or even if we don't, the phones are communicating to antennas around us, and they're creating signals and records within databases of our telco operators and providers. And those records are produced in mass. So, for example, in Slovenia, in one of the largest telco operators, we have around, I would say, 1 million records daily that are stored in the databases. So the data is generated and is used, but how accurate it really is. And this was actually the biggest challenge that we faced when we wanted to analyzing this data. So just to give you a plastic example, if we only took the raw data from the operator, we, as devices or people, would travel 7 or even almost 800 kilometers daily because there was so much noise within that data. So what the biggest challenge was how to denoise all those records. So we were sometimes traveling with the speed of light, right? So there are different mechanisms of how we did this and how to calculate these journeys. But at the end, with, I would say, removing this abnormally large amounts of pings or unrealistic speeds, we were able to come up with journeys that usually that average on 40 kilometers daily, which is the number that is also expected and validated. So what happened? So from all this mass of data, we actually came to only 5% that was really valuable for modeling. So we cleaned it, like removed all the noise. We only left with maybe 20%. And then once calculating the journeys, we said, okay, we mostly got the journeys, 15% or 85% of the journeys were the ones that only had start and end destination, which is then also difficult to model. But anyway, the models created some, I would say, behavior analytics and patterns that we can observe now in real time. And of course, I think this can also be applied to numerous applications within military responses or defense industry. The second use case or example I want to talk about is Industry 5.0. So Europe and European manufacturing companies are really struggling with high energy costs, I would say regulation, geopolitical environment and everything. But what they mostly, I think, lack today, they've fallen asleep technologically. And as computer scientists, we are here to maybe try and help them gain or close this technological depth to China and some other advanced countries. And we, of course, talk about AI. And is AI the one who can save those manufacturing companies? Definitely not. But I'm positive it can bring some added value and positive impact if done correctly. So what we were doing, for example, is in manufacturing, we were dealing with high precision manufacturing. So just to give you an example, grinding the bearing. So the bearings that are maybe in the watch, or a bearing that is on a wind power plant rotating, need to be really precise. And in this case, we're actually doing what is quite opposite of the cases that today everyone is saying, yeah, you need to collect all the data that is possible. You need to have sensors everywhere. But in this case, we actually wanted to remove the sensors because they're very expensive. They take time to measure certain things. And in high precision manufacturing, time is money, right? And for example, we were able to use artificial intelligence to remove some in-process sensors so that while grinding these bearings, and because of the thermal instability and the changes within the materials, we were able to predict the offset of how far this grinding wheel has to be to really make a perfect piece. So instead of having a sensor that is very, very expensive, we were able to do this just by manipulating with the data in real time. So what you actually really need is some representation of the data that is coming from the shop floor to somewhere on the servers, or in the cloud, or maybe on the edge device. But it's important to have this data readily available and in real time. So then, using some neural networks, we're able to replace and predict the offset in less with the tolerance of less than 1 micrometer, which is actually amazing. The other example is also within the manufacturing. So when grinding a motor shaft, you want to have, of course, the best quality product possible. But on the other hand, this really costs money. So what companies are trying to do is actually reduce or increase the intervals of grinding of these shafts so that the tools that they are using can be used as much as possible, and not just by, for example, predetermined intervals, but based on the dynamic data coming into the system. Using simple basic algorithms can actually predict dressing interval, so this grinding process, and when to remove certain tool very accurately. Okay, and coming to the third example, talking about environmental monitoring. There are many aspects to it. What we have been working on is predicting river flows. So, for example, predict how much water will flow through the hydropower plant in Slovenia. And there, of course, there are many input parameters that come into the models, but the most important one, of course, is weather forecasts. And not just weather forecasts. Of course, we use some historic measurements of how much river already passed, and some geographical and geophysical variables. But then there is also an input of how much water did Austrians release from their hydropower plants towards Slovenia, right? And calculating and using all this data to predict water flow for 3 days in advance can be done with machine learning. But, okay, and looking at the results, we were able to, I would say in brackets, beat our environmental agency that also provides these predictions by quite some margin, right? Looking at the blue, which is real values, and our orange predictions, that we can see that it's it's quite more accurate than the red line. But is this really valuable, predicting 3 days ahead for the military? I'm not sure. But predicting it maybe a month or 2 months in advance, I'm sure some tactical and strategic decisions can be made if you have this information. And this was another dimension to the problem, because predicting how much water will flow through a certain point, it's not about weather anymore. You need to consider snow cover on the mountains. You need to consider geographical position of the river and certain other parameters. And still, we can safely say that having a, I would say, 15% mean absolute percentage error when predicting flow of river for 2 months in advance is quite an achievement. So, with that note, I would like to finish, and I hope that I have illustrated a couple of examples from the industry that I strongly believe can be used also in defense and military operations. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions or do a brainstorm session. Thank you. What's next?
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to talk to you here today. And my topic's going to be leveraging artificial intelligence to enhance multi-agent simulations as a service. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background and context so that you can appreciate actually the topic I'm talking about. So my company is called Sensei. I'm the managing partner of this company. I founded the company, co-founded the company 15 years ago. And all we did since then is engineering and running multi-agent simulations for our clients. That's our main purpose. And we have a flagship product. And that flagship product is called Optima. And Optima is a constructive simulation, which is AI-driven, and it's a multi-agent simulation, and it's built to data farm and data mine military scenarios on the operational level for analytical purposes. In other words, we want to understand multi-domain operations better. And we want to help our clients to understand multi-domain operations better. In other words, we do simulation as a service. So all you hear during this talk is from my experience, from our experience. But I won't go into the product Optima so much. If you want to know more about that, get in touch after the talk. What I'm going to talk to you about in more general terms, how I think AI helps us doing our job to deliver simulation as a service to our clients. So that's how our simulation as a service cycle looks like. So first, we start with our clients' needs. In other words, we have to talk to our clients as Radovan and I actually just did it this morning. We need to find them, speak with them, elicit some information, and then we need to structure that so that it looks like doesn't work. So that it looks like input that can go into our simulation. This process is very much human-driven. Maybe you can automate a bit. Of course, if you have some kind of speech or text-to-data algorithm might be helpful. But every one of you who's in industry here, do you want to lose this precious moment of the interaction you have with your client? Probably not. But once we have the information, which is here, we can use it. We can use the AI for the scenario setup. So that's the first moment we use AI in our simulation as a service cycle. And then, because we're in simulation as a service, we provide, of course, the entire simulation, including the architecture, to our clients. In other words, we don't want to bother our clients with having to run the simulation themselves. For many reasons, it's easier if we do it for them. And of course, we do it partially in the cloud. And of course, that's an industry-grade cloud. And there's some AI that runs there too. That's not our AI. The AI that runs within the simulation is our AI. It's our own simulation software. We have built it, and we consult our clients with our own simulation software. So that's the second step where we use AI, namely the engine that runs our simulation. And then we, as I said, do data farming. So we produce a gamut of data that we have to interpret. And these days, of course, we use AI to help us interpret these terabytes of data we use while we data farm military scenarios on the operational level. So that's the third step where we use AI to interpret our raw simulation output data. And here we combine a bit with what you have heard about from our previous two speakers. So we have something that runs on the cognitive level. That's our simulation engine. And we have some AI that we use for data analysis. So let me go through these three types of AI. So first we use AI for the scenario setup. We call this AI that we also developed ourselves, Sarge. It's a scenario authoring and rapid generation engine. So it's an AI agent. And to some degree, we've implemented there in our simulation software an agentic workflow. And the AI helps within our simulation environment to automate the scenario setup and the configuration of the optimal simulations. In our case, these are configurations of systems and systems of systems. Tanks, drones, fighter jets, how they communicate with each other on the different echelons, and so forth. So why do we use Sarge? Well, because Optima is constructive. And a constructive simulation, per definition, has no human in the loop. But the simulation as a service process has a human in the loop. And where's the bottleneck? Well, it's us humans. Okay? So we actually want to save human capital and time by getting around this human bottleneck in the simulation as a service cycle. As I said, Sarge helps us to define the parameters of the different systems, to assign them, but it also helps us to come up with the different orbits, and it also helps us to come up, to some degree at least, with the different courses of actions. So all this can be automated. How is it technically done? Well, there is a database, so to speak, on one side of the system from which Sarge pulls all the structural data. And there's another database that's user-defined, user-centric, from which Sarge pulls all the parameter data, pulls it together, and comes up with those different scenarios. In principle, it's a RAG, a retrieval augmented generation algorithm that we implemented there. And of course, we make sure that these two different kinds of informations that are pulled together in order to generate the scenario don't contradict each other, and that we always have a logically consistent scenario. The second type of AI, that we are using is the AI that runs our simulation engine. That's basically, if you want, the brain of our simulation. We use it to inform agent behaviors, and because many agents make up groups, platoons, companies, battalions, and so forth, we also use it on the organizational level. So on the agent level, we have some relatively straightforward learning AI that helps the agents adapt over time and partially come better. If you will, it's a kind of trial and error approach. We have a neural network implemented into the agents that works for the learning part to some degree with some reinforcement learning and some genetic algorithms. We also started to work with small language models, but that's still work in progress. And a good example for this is pathfinding. How do our agents that represent, for example, helicopters, find their paths over time? And how do they learn if they have not been successful, for example, doing reconnaissance, helping with logistics in the case of the helicopter, or fulfilling a combat mission? Then on the second level, we have those agents organized probably up to the company level. They learn not only as agents, but also as an organization as such. We do this using an AI approach called neuroevolution. There, we do not only rely on trial and error with regard to does something work or does something not work. We also adapt the entire structure, the entire topology of the neural network that's available, which helps us to also manage the organizational level learning. There also, we started to work with multi-agent reinforcement learning, and that's still work in progress. A good example for a good example for this is TEVA, threat evaluation and weapons assignment, a problem that we address within the simulation using this approach. And finally, we also have an approach for learning on the upper echelons, so on the brigade and division levels, across different generations and across different scenarios. And we call this adversarial best response. And there we use classical genetic algorithms to learn for our organizations. And the best example here is doctrinal behaviors. We don't want those doctrinal behaviors change as rapidly as in, for example, the adaptive learning approach. We want it to gradually evolve over time. So, last, the AI we use for simulation output interpretation. So while Sarge and while the AI we use to inform agent behaviors and organizational behaviors are very much our own creations, for simulation output interpretation, we can use straightforwardly an LLM, which of course we haven't trained ourselves. We are a relatively small company. We made very good experience with large language models of the types of Claude 3.5 Sonnet, or even as ChatGPT works very well. And actually, despite the current hype around SLMs, small language models, those LLMs work for us still best. The smaller ones are not fit for the task. Although the LLMs do need, to some degree, some fine-tuning. And just to give you a very brief example, if we simulate a large-scale scenario with ground-based air defense, then Claude 0.5, in this case, comes up having been fed the raw simulation output data with a statement like, ground-based air defense's longer range allows it to engage carrier aircraft earlier, potentially before they can launch their standoff weapons. This is particularly evident in the high number of Su-25s and MiG-29 fighter escorts destroyed. That was part of a GBAT/Comao scenario we simulated. It didn't need a lot of training. It was actually very convenient for us to use, and is still very convenient for us to use such an approach for a first step at data interpretation, because again, these are huge amounts of data. So, to come to a conclusion, what's the added value for us in our simulations of AI? And I just come up with a few points here. In the setup phase, of course, we save time. But also, it helps us to explore a broader and more systematic range of experimental conditions. In other words, it helps us to systematically go through the design of experiments phase. That's, of course, especially helpful if you are in CD&E active. Then, on the behavioral side, we save time again, of course. But then also, we increase the fidelity, the keyword here is explainable AI, of our models and simulations, and we increase the autonomy, and therefore, to some degree, also the intelligence of our agents within the simulation regarding decision-making. And we want to have a decision support. No, we want to have more intelligence when we ask for decision support these days as compared to 10 years ago. Finally, on output interpretation, well, once again, we save time. But then also, the LLMs perform standoff as to our expectation. I would want to see more or less the same results interpretation as if I would be doing or running my own statistic programs on it. But they also help me generate plausible insights I haven't thought about, which is extremely helpful, frankly speaking. So, make a long story short, human capital is a primary constraint in modern warfare. We see it every day. And human-AI collaboration creates a competitive advantage in cognitive warfare, and I just gave you a very small glimpse into how we approach this topic. Thanks a lot. Are there any questions? Okay. Thanks again, and I'm around if there are other questions later.
Hello to everybody from my side. I hope we are not tired so much after the lunch. Still many people here, so thanks a lot. Let me introduce myself from the first side. I'm Andrej Messner, coming from IGEA company. IGEA company is a company which is dealing with spatial data for more than 35 years. We are producing IT softwares in the field of spatial data. So today presentations we prepare together with Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science in Maribor. With them we are collaborating for the last 25 years, very much, quite a lot. And geospatial intelligence to support the tactical level of warfare, that's the point what I will present today. We have a physical world, and with many sensors, we nowadays know in the virtual world what the physical world is today. We know quite well. We have here in virtual world really a lot of data, but if we really have enough information about what's going on, that's the question. And with the analytics and diagnostic, we know really knowledge that we understand processes, what's going on in the physical world. And that's very important to tactical level of warfare. And of course, with this analytics, we heard in the last few presentations that simulations and prognostic is very important to make good decisions, to make good planning, to find optimization of some solutions. And in this environment of digital twin, this is environment where we can make more intelligent solutions, faster solutions, and that's the point. In the last 4 years, we made research and innovative project for a Ministry of Defense of the Republic of Slovenia called BLS Algo. So unmanned aerial systems and algorithms of intelligence, artificial intelligence, spatial intelligence, how to really detecting, recognizing all kinds of objects in the real world as fast as possible. So we are talking about real time, and of course with these informations out from the data support decisions in the real time in the battlement management system. And in the next short video, you will see
the BLS Algo
of
system
this
offers a suite of solutions that combine all the main object detection and image processing technologies while operating on a unified, user-friendly, and secure platform. The BLS Algo platform supports the following technologies: detection and recognition of military and civilian infrastructure using artificial intelligence algorithms, detection of movements of hidden or camouflaged military or civilian infrastructure based on the optical flow, a LiDAR system that detects any hidden or camouflaged target, new breakthrough thermography technology supported by artificial intelligence that can see the invisible, a system for anonymizing individuals and objects in footage. All these technologies operate within the unified BLS Algo platform, enabling efficient work, easier user training, unified data storage, and most importantly, data security.
How to make invisible visible? That's the question. And of course, all different kinds of sensors has some advantages and some disadvantages. So that's the reason why we have to really make the fusions of data of different kinds of sensors. And in the field of geo-AI, development is really fast. So that's the reason why we upgrade this BLS Algo to the platform called Gyros. So total awareness, what's going on in the field, in our surrounding, how to support tactical level of warfare with the good information, not only with the data. And in this case, data fusion is very important, that we really get properly informations out from data, and that we can do real-time mapping in the tactical level of warfare, and of course, again, how to decide faster and better. The thermography was mentioned before, but with this thermography, we can also use on the civilian side how to find missing person. In high quality thermography, we can really find the very precise temperature of object or body, what we are looking for. And with this information, we can do this, let's say, search faster and faster. With the LiDAR data, we can find invisible object under the vegetation, under camouflage nets. But of course, LiDAR has big disadvantage because it's active sensors, and of course, enemy can see you very fast. So only in few cases, LiDAR is really, really useful. For the good models, for recognition to use computer vision, of course, you need very good models, and very good models needs very good input data with a lot of patterns, and of course, in the fields of defense, sometimes it's very hard to get real data and good data. And one of the options is that also we get training data from the simulators. Simulator where we can make scenarios as we want. And very important is that in this simulator, the data are very, very good. So very, very similar to physical world. For example, anonymization in real time, in some cases, is very important. And not only the people, also some different kind of object. What about GeoAI to support drone management? In other research and development project, we are producing one micro system in 3 different versions. One for observations with gimbal camera, other to drop off the cargo, and third as kamikaze. With GeoAI, it's very important to support management of this drone, especially in the situation where we don't have GNSS signal. We lose communication with the ground station. This GeoAI support us how to find our target. Where we're talking about the swarms, it will be even more important. Each drone, never mind if it's on the ground, air, or in the water, can have specific sensors. And in these drones, the data can be processed, and an algorithm of recognition can be done already on the drone, and to send the data, not only the data, the information out of this data to the central unit. So federated artificial intelligence between these units in swarm is very important. And how to make optimization of decisions between all these drones. Of course, still very important that is human in the loop for the really important decisions. But for the micro decisions about what's going on, can be done automatically by each unit. For the end, geospatial artificial intelligence is the base for the successful execution of combat operation in modern battlefield. Second, every combat asset, air, land, water, require the support of real-time geospatial artificial intelligence. So to be really aware what's going on, you really need total awareness. So thank you very much to all, to organizers. And if you have any further question, you can do it right now, or visit us in the place where Slovenian Ministry of Defense present this research and development project. Thank you. Any question? Thank you very much.
So, hello everyone, I'm Mate, and I'm going to be speaking about GNSS denied localization. So I'm a part of the Visual Cognitive Systems Laboratory where we have rich experience in both basic and applied computer vision research. So we cover a lot of areas like visual object tracking, object counting, object detection for surface vessels, industrial anomaly detection, and in some of these areas we are among the best in the world. So if anyone here has used OpenCV for tracking, you're very likely have used some of our methods. So in the last few years, we started, a part of the laboratory, started to focus on issues of localization of different robots in different environments, mainly underwater and in the air. And I have been totally focused on this for the last few years. So first I would like to show to you or prove to you that the underwater environment is unlike any other environment. Basically, we cannot use the signals that we normally use in other environments. So GPS, Wi-Fi does not work, or for that matter, any other radio signals, except if you have really large submarines and you can drag kilometers of cable behind you. Then cameras are not really usable, at least for navigation purposes. So if you have some known objects in the area or for some infrastructure inspection or archaeological stuff, then you can wait for the right time with the right equipment and do 3D reconstructions. But for navigation purposes, because underwater in 99% of the time you won't be able to see more than a few meters in front of you. Then just the dynamics of the water, if you're trying to experiment with some unconventional drives, it's really hard to simulate this or optimize for this. I know of some works where people are trying to use reinforcement learning to create these drives or different types of propulsion methods, but it's really hard. Doing experiments is also hard because you need specialized personnel, divers with specialized equipment, and so on. And then just the area is such that the sea bottom changes and you have different flora that grows. So the thing that, let's say, works underwater are acoustics. So underwater microphones and speakers, basically sonars, acoustic modems, and so on. However, it's not trivial to get them to work reliably. So my focus is, as I said, this talk also is on the localization problem, which in principle is very simple. We just need to determine 6 parameters of the robot at any point in time: X, Y, Z position, and roll, pitch, yaw, rotation. Now, 3 of these are relatively easy, and these are roll, pitch, and Z. Why? Because low-cost IMUs and pressure sensors can do a fine enough job if you're not looking for extreme accuracy. in the range of centimeters and so on. Difficult is to get yaw or orientation, to get it navigation grade. So you can use magnetometers, which are cheap, but if you're using this yaw to predict your position, they're not really good enough, at least out of the box. And it's very difficult then to say where you are in space. So translationally, X and Y. Here, the usual solution is to use a north-seeking gyroscope from which you can get absolute orientation. And then we can use a Doppler velocity log. So Doppler velocity log is a specialized sensor. It's like a police radar, but it uses acoustics, and you point it at the sea bottom. So you have your absolute orientation, you have your velocity, you can just integrate or basically summarize these measurements to get your position. But there are a few issues here. First, north-seeking gyroscopes or fiber optic gyroscopes are very expensive instruments. So in the range upwards of 50,000 euros and more. High-grade Doppler velocity logs are also very expensive, basically in the same range. Fortunately, there are some cheaper options appearing on the markets today. But the main issue is, even if you invest these funds into the equipment, again, the position error will increase with time, as time passes by. So this might be within acceptable bounds. If you're, let's say, I want to travel a few kilometers and be accurate within 10 meters about my position. It gets really hard if you want to travel tens of kilometers and then having accuracy within few meters. So these are some of the issues we are addressing within the Subuvis 2 project, which is EDA Category B project, where the main objective is within the partnering countries to develop drones, biomimetic drones that can swarm. So these are heterogeneous drones. Each partner, so currently it's Germany, Poland, Slovenia, and Portugal. Each partner has its own vessels. So these are different types of underwater drones. So we joined this project a bit late. So in a really short time, we had to make up for the progress that other partners had some lead start time. Okay, so the first step was to develop the drone itself. Here you can see the design is Stingray inspired. We can talk about the specifics maybe after the talk. Shortly from first experiments, testing different sensors, sensor configuration, control systems, motors, how to place things. So the first experiments were in the pool, but pools are really bad environment for acoustic instruments because they are like an echo chamber. So then there's a few months of progress between these two videos. This is from one of our testings in Poland together with the Polish partners. This is mainly the Polish Naval Academy guys who have a nice area where we can test our robots in the water. In the interest of time, I will shorten this video a bit. So here you can see one of the methods that we developed this is what you're seeing here. The red line is the GPS signal, and the green line is our dead reckoning approach, which is basically we use inertial sensors, magnetic sensors, and acoustic sensors to achieve this positioning. So in our approach, we do, instead of calibrating each sensor separately, we do a joint calibration of all the sensors. Well, I don't try to get the sensors to each be as accurate as possible. We try to model the uncertainty of the sensors in such a way that when we integrate the measurements, I get the position that a GPS would return. So this might mean that a sensor might be calibrated a bit differently. It might be calibrated so it compensates for an error from another sensor. Okay? So these are learning approaches, but here we are still not talking about deep learning. The issue is that, as I said, odometry, however well you do it, the position error will grow in time. So it's nice to have some ways of reducing this position error. So we have also developed ways to use a known bathymetry, or 3D shape of the sea bottom, to fix these odometry errors. So here what you're seeing is simulation, but simulation based on real data. We can do this process either with a multi-beam echo sounder, which is really accurate sonar, or from the velocity sensor I mentioned, DVL, which also returns ranges. On the right-hand side, you can see with the blue line the odometry position, and on the right-hand side, you can see the true position of the robot and our predicted position. It's much closer to the real position of the robot. We're also working with trying to transfer our knowledge for visual cameras to different kind of cameras, acoustic cameras or imaging sonars. Here you can see we are using a point tracking deep neural network to basically tell us predict the position or the movement of different parts of each point in this image, and from that we can calculate the relative position that the drone has driven. And here you can see some tests of the swarming itself. So the two vehicles in the front are the Polish vehicles. Our is bottom left. Here they are keeping a V formation. On the left-hand side, you can see the visualization in our C2, which is again another story, but we also developed this C2, which is really nice because it's hosted inside the robot, so you can control the robot with any device that has a browser. Mobile phone, tablet, don't need to install any special software to control the robot. Here is another video of almost a complete mission where the robots also switch formation. You can see that our vehicle is following the Polish vehicle closely, and it reacts, so they communicate acoustically. If they are on the surface, they can communicate through Wi-Fi, but underwater they communicate acoustically. And our vehicle responds to its movements. Now it's keeping a V formation. Now shortly it will switch to a column formation. So we tested different scenarios, different types of errors, different types of problems that might happen. Now it is in a column formation. So what we have learned thus far. So that reckoning, to put it up, is still key. Why? Because although the error will grow, it works in any scenario. So it's great to have ways to fix this error. For example, we're using bathymetry, which is sort of a low frequency feature, or imaging sonar, which is a high frequency feature. But we found that in real situations, there will always be large areas in the water where there are no features. So it's not, even if you have very advanced AI, if there's no information to process, the AI cannot really do anything. So we are trying to do, the odometry that you saw previously was done with we have multiple magnetometers, so we are not, the accuracy is the same area as if you were using an optical gyroscope. We are trying to push this to the maximum, and by New Year, this year we'll test different deep learning techniques to process our sensors. Now we are using just learning techniques, it's not yet deep. Again, all of these approaches in the next few months will be joined into a single approach that can use whatever information is available and combine it in a statistically correct way. And next, we really want to have a way to fix this error by surfacing or peeking beyond the surface a bit, but not relying on a GPS signal. So we have knowledge from other projects that we can, and we will shortly apply directly to this issue. The second topic is aerial visual localization. Now, this project started at about exactly 10 a.m. today. But we have been doing hopefully, we were hoping that the promises will come true, and they have come true, so we have started preemptively working on this topic. So Visual SLAM is a long researched topic. So SLAM is simultaneous localization and mapping. You have a camera, which is an ideal sensor because it's a passive, low-cost sensor, and it contains a lot of information. And in the last year, there have been a multitude of deep learning-based SLAM approaches. Now, the issue is most of these approaches are developed for ground vehicles, indoor or outside, but by ground vehicles. So when you take this and directly apply it to the aerial domain, very often things break, because just the geometry of the problem is different. In the ground domain, you're moving inside the scene, and in the aerial domain, you're moving parallel to the scene. So usually you need some adjustments of these approaches to get them to work in the aerial domain. The second thing I wanted to comment on is that SLAM is basically visual odometry. Let's say this is just image stitching. And then SLAM relies on loop closures, which means revisiting the same location to actually reduce the errors that have accumulated from visual odometry. Now, this requirement for loop closures is very limiting. So I would say here the key technology, at least in most defense applications, is actually visual odometry. Because if you want to start in point A and then reach point B without revisiting any location, this SLAM does not basically come into play because there aren't any loop closures. Furthermore, you might do a false detection of a loop closure and then hurt your localization. So we can see some of the data sets that we have used. So the thing on the left where the drone flies over the same area, you can do this forever. You can travel hundreds or thousands of kilometers over the same area, and this will work well. The issues come into play when you have a path where the position does not repeat. So we have new information and new information and new information, so on. So here are some examples of I think, 100-mile trajectory over 100-kilometer trajectory over Ljubljana, and here the error, if you just apply directly SLAM, grows. So I cannot talk about any details here, but we have been addressed this problem. What you're seeing now is images where we have two neural networks, one that just does feature encoding. So basically we take the image and puts the image in some space that is nice to work in, and then another neural network which just connects the images. And we have some very promising results where, I mean, I don't want to name any explicit numbers so early in the project. It's only been 5 hours, but I think we can do tens of kilometers, if not hundreds, in good conditions. Now, SLAM by itself has some downsides that I mentioned. First is the need for loop closures to get really good positioning. But secondly, we only know the position relative to the starting position. If you're not certain in the starting position, then you will not be certain about the end position. Secondly, there are cases where it's really hard to get SLAM to work. So, for example, you're flying over a large body of water, and the water is moving, maybe in unpredictable ways. There's nothing really to see or catch on to. So we need ways of addressing these problems of SLAM, and we are, in parallel, working on aerial to satellite cross-view matching. So you have an image from your drone, and you match it to a known database of images. This by itself can be a difficult task for reasons we can discuss maybe after the talk, or if anyone is interested, you can ask me. But we believe that these two approaches, so SLAM and aerial to satellite view matching, can provide solutions for really long-term, long-range, any conditions localization without using GPS. You can see some of our preliminary work here. The image on the left is a likelihood or a probability field of where our neural network thinks the drone is. And you can see it's consistently darkest around the X, or the X is basically the top position, the drone is moving in this way. And we still haven't got around to it yet, but this will be much improved by processing the stream of images as a video and not regarding each image, as a thing by itself. So to summarize what I said here, the main issues in the underwater domain is the very high cost of sensors and equipment. So I think if some decision makers find these companies that make these specialized sensors and invest in I don't know what way to make these sensors cheaper and then distribute these sensors to universities and research institutions, you would get the research for free. And the second issue in underwater is that even with sensors, it's hard to get ground truth data. For example, we are getting a file, bathymetric file that shows us the sea bottom. Nobody in the world knows how accurate this data is, right? We can probe with a stick a few positions, but then you cannot probe the whole sea with the stick. And looking at some of the raw data that we obtained, sometimes the filters remove features that are there. So it's a really difficult environment to work in. In the aerial domain, the issue we are having is that we have a lack of relevant data sets, okay? As researchers, it's very hard for us to actually create a data set where we fly tens of kilometers over some stuff. We have a license for a small drone, but then in theory we have to get approval of all the people whose property are going to fly over and things like this. And we think that, for ministries of defense or armies, this should not be, you can just stick a smartphone on a helicopter and get a relevant data set. So in the underwater domain, interesting things that are happening is that we are getting really accurate simulations that can do sonar simulation, and we can get data that then can, if the same thing applies as it applies in computer vision. In computer vision, we've seen that you can train a model in simulation and then with few real samples adapt it to real world. So this is very active for underwater domain. And then we can see that the same conclusions that we have reached are being reached around the world. Basically, you need multimodality and you need to use every bit of information that is available because it's such a hard environment to work in. Maybe you've heard the saying, it's harder to find a submarine under the sea than a golf ball in space. And this is true. The problem is, it's also very hard to find your own submarine, or the submarine to find itself, especially if it's small. So right now, we can, instead of waiting for AI models to mature, to get enough data, we can use knowledge of physics and mathematics to bridge these gaps in the AI. But soon, this will be AI-only systems. What we need are many data sets that will be available for researchers. Again, if you have the data sets, people will do the research, because people need to publish papers to get a larger salary, okay? And advances are happening really fast all around the world. Especially in Visual SLAM, we can hardly keep up with implementing the methods. We have spent a month implementing some methods, and then you see that a week ago some other method was published. So in SLAM, there was really slow, I would say, advance, and now it's happening really fast. So we are trying to be at the forefront of this. Thank you for the attention. Maybe some question for a change? Yeah.
Small elements can be applied to large systems that works usually in a different, more in depth respect to the others.
Yes, it can be applied, but it can be some parts of the system can be applied even better. So you have many magnetometers at larger distances, so you can judge local disruptions in the magnetic field. So with very deep, very large depths, you can use, the thing is, I'm thinking about the Doppler velocity log, which requires a distance of, let's say, up to 50 meters or 75 meters from the bottom. So if you are inside the middle column and you have a kilometer above you, kilometer below you, might be a bit problematic to use the same approach. If you go near the bottom, I think you can apply basically the same approach. It might work even better. Okay, thanks.
Good afternoon to everyone. So my name is Saša Blažić. I come from the Laboratory of Control Systems and Cybernetics at the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, University of Ljubljana. And today I will be presenting the work that is actually quite related to the previous one. It is on advanced drone localization with SLAM technology and detection of key objects with a neural network. This work has been prepared together with my colleagues, PhD student Eric Sodat and assistant professor Simon Tomasic, who are also in the environment. And now I would also like to say thanks to Radovan for inviting us to this event. So I actually was not very sure what is like the common denominator of the people in the audience. So I tried to prepare this presentation in a sort of accessible way. The point here is that we will be speaking about SLAM, as was also discussed before. And the main point of bringing this up is why we do it is, of course, this comes to great importance, especially when GPS is not available. So we are, of course, we think that in our world, GPS is mostly in our common lives is always available, but obviously, as we know, in certain environments, it's not true. We have like jamming, spoofing, and stuff like that can happen, and especially in indoor environments or underwater, you cannot use it at all. So what do we do then? If we don't have some reliable source of global positioning, then obviously our drones lose a lot of their capabilities. So what do we aim here? We aim for some accurate estimation of our pose along with or our position and pose along with, of course, building of the map. And this is actually the principal thing what we try to do here. So we will try to present the algorithm of a SLAM, or non-trivial algorithm, an approach with a SLAM, where we actually somehow augment it with some detection of objects based on artificial neural networks, or deep neural networks, or whatever you call them. So what actually is the SLAM? It is actually, we've been using this word now for two talks in a row, but anyway, maybe it is worth mentioning. It's like simultaneous localization and mapping. So what does it mean? Imagine you are like in a dark building, and you only have a flashlight and try to navigate yourself around, and you don't know anything. So you have just you have a certain proximity around you. You can see where something is or is not, and then obviously you need to build a map in your head and always try to know, or always you want to know where you are in this map. And this exactly is the purpose of SLAM. So we answered two questions. One question is, where am I? So I have to position myself. And of course, I need to also answer the question, what's around me? So what do I see? How does this fit into some global map or some big map? And obviously, there are several ways how to do it. And I do agree that we have to include all the possible information that is available to us. So we have to extract all the information from whatever the sensors you might have around you. Obviously, we are also dealing here primarily with cameras, and I do agree this is a very important instrument for us. But obviously, also others could be used as well. And I also do agree, yes, loop closure, I mean, it's not really necessary to have it, but why do we need to have it? Usually, loop closure is necessary when we have like the absence of any sensors that will give you some sort of global information. But this global information might not be really global. I mean, if you see a landmark where you know where it is, then you can actually fix it, and then you can work from there. And obviously, all our sensors are somehow susceptible to drift. And this is why when closing a loop, then you actually can recalculate all the map and actually somehow decrease this drifting. The point of the camera, or the problem with the camera, is that we only see, it won't work here. So we only see like a 2D projection of the 3D world around us. And this, of course, has its problems. And this is why building a map is not that easy. You can actually help yourself like with extracting features from your view. I mean, if you see some corners, some edges, some textures, or anything like that, you can actually work from there. And you can see on the upper picture, like in the mountains, you can see, I mean, a lot of features that can be used successfully when building the map. Okay, so how do we actually do this? As already said, our principal sensor is here is the camera. So this is like a visual SLAM, but we also add other sensors. Of course, inertial measurement units that actually determine your rotation, your acceleration, and stuff like that. And then, of course, you can integrate them, but we know integration is a problem. Mathematically speaking, it introduces a lot of drift again. You can also use like LiDARs or thermal sensors where you can actually calculate or see the distance from the objects more clearly. This is very helpful. But obviously, these instruments have problems when used, especially in certain military, let's say, operations or things like that. And at the end, we see like the map of points. And these maps of points are not so useful because when you want to do something with your map, you need a better structure of your map. Because why do we need to use them? Of course, we need to do something. I want to design my path where I want to go. I want to avoid certain objects or certain enemies or whatever the case may be. So our approach actually is based on the camera, as I said. And then we built a certain quite high-performance code, which is quite robust. It runs fastly. It can actually be complemented also with other approaches, so you can actually add some, let's say, detected objects onto that. And this is why this is quite useful. And this is actually what you see on that picture is. This is actually just collected in our laboratory, so it is just a whole. And basically, what you see is the collection of points. So the cloud of points, which has really limited usability. Okay, of course, what to add onto that is some detection of objects. So based on convolution neural networks, you can actually identify the objects, and then obviously you can put them onto this map. So these objects can be either static or dynamic, or maybe changing like here. So you can serve this different the different purposes for that. So this is actually adding something to this map. So this is quite technical slide, and since we are quite late, I will not go into any details, but the point here is that you want to recognize certain objects on the picture, like chairs or sofas or whatever, and actually you see them on this picture. So this actually adds some semantics, some meaningfulness to these maps. Yes, and then your map suddenly looks like this. So it has some recognized object on them to work on. So this is some simulation that was done in some simulation environment. So you see here, actually this is this view down was actually the look from the drone. So we see the drone from above, but we also saw his view. This is this, and we saw here two vehicles that actually have been spotted, and then based on that, this is actually your map that was built by these drones. So we see some trees, some hill here, and obviously these two vehicles not just seen but also recognized by our artificial neural network. So how can we use this, or where can we use this technology? Obviously, we can use it in many places where you have GNNS denied environment, or this can be like tunnels, canyons, or some places where you don't have GPS signals, or of course when this signal is like corrupted by of course some by whomever. It doesn't actually mean it's not important. And of course we can use this in intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, reconnaissance, where you can actually have live 3D maps where you can actually put on these objects instantly. We can actually have swarms and teams that work collaboratively, so they can actually share their maps. They can actually build their maps based on different views that they have. And we can have search and rescue mapping where there is no other infrastructure available. We can also use simulators, not just real environments. And simulators are very useful because you can actually, for example, scan real sites, real environments with SLAM, and then build digital twins, so some environments where you can actually work inside these environments and have certain testing of your algorithms or training of certain personnel. You can actually also complement this with AR training, and so there are a lot of scenarios where this can actually come into play. You can see here on this movie how actually when the drone is flying, it actually has recognized or does recognize certain objects, which is, of course, this is very useful for military operations or also some civilian operations. And at the end, I would just like to mention that now we have identified several ways where we will work in the future. I think that it is very. I think that working towards the collaborative SLAM seems to be quite a good idea, or we will probably pursue this direction. And I think that more or less concludes my talk, so thank you very much for your attention. Any questions, please? Thank you very much again.